Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube video. This is 25th of July 2015, round 2 of pouring the motor end shield. I'm just about to pick up the crucible out of the furnace and start pouring the mould. So here goes. Got hold of the crucible with my long tongs. I line it up carefully and then I just pour until it comes out from the other end. Voila! Now we leave that to cool, and once it sets we'll pull the mould apart and see what we got. Whatever is left in the crucible I will pour it into a ingot, because I don't like leaving metal inside the crucible for obvious reasons. This metal expands when you heat it up next and it will crack your steel crucible. So I'll get rid of this and put the crucible back in the furnace safely. Crucible now returned to the furnace safely. I let the extractor suck up all the fumes, and then shortly we'll pull the mould apart and see what we've got. This time the mould came out better, so hopefully the results should be better today. Okay folks, round 2. So open the mould up and see what we've got today. Here we go. Get rid of that. Start chipping away the sand now. Get the pliers. If you're doing this sort of work inside, it's a must to have an extractor fan, especially when working with petrol bond sand, as the oil is burning off and it's going up the extractor now. Green sand, you don't get this problem. In a way, green sand is better. But for intricate work like this, where detail is important, I recommend petrol bond. It seems to hold together better, and there's no messing around with mixing water in it and getting the right mixture, as I can never get that right to save my life. More cleaning. A wire brush would make this so much easier. I'll have to invest in one. This is a motor end shield casting for each end of an induction motor. The drive shaft will come out there through that hole, through that centre part. There'll be a hole drilled there or bored through. All this will have to be bored out because trying to get the sand to go in there is near impossible. Every time I try and take my mould apart, if I had a cavity in here, the sand would be left behind in the cavity. So I thought the best thing to do is to just cast this as it is and then put this in the lathe and bore it out exactly as it should be to make the inside part of the casting perfect. Major cleaning up operation needed. But today it has come out better. The one thing I did differently to what I normally do, and this is where I've been having trouble, is when the pattern is in the sand, before I take the pattern out, I stuck a, how shall we say, a piece of steel bar inside the centre of the pattern, and I wrapped it like this from different directions to loosen the pattern in the sand before I could withdraw it out, and that made it so much easier, and that's why it's not a bad job today. There'll probably be one or two voids that need to be filed out, but other than that it's not too bad. I'll say this is one of the best castings I've done in a long time, especially trying to cast a component that's so hard. There will be two of these that make up each electric motor. One for the front and one for the back of the motor. You know, the back end of the motor will have one of these, and the front end will have one too, which will probably be drilled and tapped to accept screw holes, which will allow the motor to be mounted onto anything that it's going to be driving. In this area here, one section of one motor end shield will have a hole drilled in here for the wires to come out for a connection, you know, to the mains or capacitors, starting capacitor. As these are capacitor start, capacitor run motors, single phase induction motors. The center in between these two pieces will be a motor stator, the part of the motor which contains all the windings, and in the middle will be a rotor which will fit in between the two parts that will go through each motor end shield. With this being a single-ended shaft motor, there'll only be one shaft which will come through the front of the motor. The back of the motor will just have the shaft will be flat, and it will be flush with this part of the motor end shield. For the front of the motor end shield, the drive shaft can be as long as I want it to be, depending on what application it's going to be driving. And sometimes the shaft may have a flat on it, or it might have a hole or a keyhole recess drill, you know, milled into it for it to have a key. For example, if a pulley was to be mounted to it or something. But you get the idea. Whoopsie daisy. This is quite hot, so I wouldn't like to drop it on myself just yet. But I will come back in a second once I've got this cooled down with water and cleaned up properly. We'll show you in a minute. Right guys, we're back again now. This is the finished motor end shield. I've cooled it down with water, cleaned it up with a brush. Just needs a bit of filing in these areas here, but most of the detail where the screws will go to keep it together. They screw the motor together, I mean, have come out fairly good. Don't know if you can see that, but it's not too bad. With such a pattern, this is very hard to get it perfect, as when I withdraw the pattern out of the sand, some of the sand comes away, which leaves voids like this in the mould. So what I have to do with this is just to file this like that. Once we get rid of that and file that level with that, the same as that, it'll be perfect. But there's not much filing to do really. It came out pretty decent. We cut the runner and the riser off, so these won't be needed. And the inside here will be bored out, hollow on the lathe, leaving an area here which will be where the bearings will go for the motor shaft, motor drive shaft. On the whole, I didn't do too bad today. Now this is very encouraging. And I know the one thing I did differently to what I do every time was to wrap the pattern in the sand. When I say the word wrap, I mean like this. This loosens the pattern apparently in the sand in such a way where you can just withdraw it out without much of the sand sticking to the pattern. There was also one other thing I did differently, which I forgot to mention also in the video, is I did not use any parting powder today. I know this sounds crazy, but that white powder you dust over your pattern before you put the sand into the moulding flask, I didn't use it. Now, this seemed to have come out better without using that. For some reason, my parting powder seems to make the sand more sticky. And it seems to stick to the pattern when it shouldn't do. So these were the two things I did differently. Hope this helps you guys out there and gives you some ideas. Many thanks for watching. Cheerio.